Give me 1 second. All right, and we're recording. Miigwech again, everyone, for being here. It's good to see you all.
Bonjour, everyone. My name is Kelsey Myrie. I work at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. And we have Rick Gitar here tonight. He's presenting pollinator plants of Northeast Minnesota, along with some of their pollinators. And I just wanted to quick add that if you are interested in going to this class, the seed starting in-person class, you can go ahead and message me in the chat as well. I'll write down your name and we will count that as an RSVP too. That might be an easy way for some folks. So great. Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to your presentation. Again, pollination or pollinator plants of Northeast Minnesota, along with some of their pollinators. Thank you.
So, hello everybody, I'm Rick Gitar. As you can see, I'm a master herbalist, naturalist, and I've been formally trained in college as a botanist. So that's some of my background. So I have 21 different native pollinator plants to share with you tonight. So next slide. And they are in no particular order. So this is just sort of random. The first one is Anise. Most of these will be perennial herbs, but you'll see that there are a few others that are not perennial. This plant is in the mint family. It's even though it's perennial, it's actually short-lived. It actually only lives about 3 years, but it's got a vigorous root system, and it's like other mints, it'll colonize open spaces. So you have to be careful if you're going to plant it in an area, it'll spread through your whole yard. So if you want to plant it in your garden, you need to put it in a container and keep it sort of in its own area. The leaves are edible. And it can be used as a substitute for mint in cooking and used in the salad. It's visited by bees, hummingbirds, butterflies, and moths. So this is a bee right there. So, and you can see the dark coloration, the dark green here in the map is indicates that it's native. So that's on the map. So next one. Next one is butterfly milkweed, or just butterfly weed. It's actually not it's different than most milkweeds in that this does not have milky juice like other milkweeds. This is a staple for monarch butterflies. The caterpillars feed on the plants, and the butterflies also feed on the flowers. The root is chewed by Indians as a cure for pleurisy and other pulmonary ailments. So the plant is sometimes called pleurisy root. Pleurisy is an inflammation of the tissues that line the lungs and the chest cavity. Honeybees and bumblebees also visit this, and hummingbirds also like this. The brightly colored flowers attract many of these insects. As you can see, its range is various. You can see that Carleton County is not shaded, but I have found this plant in Carleton County, so it's been observed here. Next one. Showy milkweed is also used by monarch butterflies and is very common for butterflies. It'll often bloom 2 to 3 months with good weather. It has a long tap root, so it doesn't transplant easily. It's very pubescent, meaning it has lots of hair, short little hairs that grow on the plant, particularly the stems and the underside of the leaves. Again, it's a perennial, and it needs full sunlight to grow. And this also I have seen in Carleton County, so this map has not been updated much. So all of these maps that you see, I obtained from the USDA plants database that can be obtained online. Next one. So this one, New England Aster, of course, is in the Aster family. This one prefers partial shade, doesn't grow well in full sunlight. It's a host plant to the pearl crescent butterfly, which you can see is up here. But it's also a nectar source for the monarch butterfly. So the monarch butterfly will visit this plant for nutrition. It's a fast growing plant and can grow up to actually 6 feet in height. It'll grow in most types of soil, including clay, loam, and sand. The bloom color varies from a lavender or a pink or purple. And this map is a bit off. I found it in Douglas County and in Carleton County. Next one. Calico Aster is another aster. It's also called side flowering aster because of the way it grows, often leaning towards one side. It grows large and clumping. It'll generally keep blooming until the first frost. It gets the name calico because these plants will start out with the yellow in the center like this, but over time, the flower will change color in the center to a dark brown or a purple color, dark red color. So this center button in the flower changes as the flower matures. So that's how it gets the name calico. It's visited mostly by native bees, the Andrina species. This is an Andrina bee. And you can see it's very common throughout northeast Minnesota and Wisconsin. Next one. Stiff sunflower. This one you need to plant in full sun, grows up to 6 feet, 7 inches tall. Most of the leaves are at the base of the plant. The plant can have from 1 to 10 flower heads, but most will only have 1 flower. It's visited by a whole host of insects, including bumblebees, bee flies, and this is a bee fly right here. Butterflies and skipper butterflies. This is a skipper butterfly you can see right here. And it has a good range throughout northeast Minnesota and the rest of Minnesota and even into the Dakotas. Next one. Maximillian sunflower is a very common sunflower that's planted in gardens. The flower head can be up to 5 inches wide, so it's a large sunflower. The tubers that it produces in its roots are edible. You can harvest them in winter or early spring. The seeds can be lightly toasted and eaten. Of course, you got to plant them in full sun. They can grow up to 10 feet tall. The birds like to eat the seeds as well. And it provides nectar for butterflies, honeybees, and our native bees. Next one. Blackeyed Susan. This one most people should be pretty familiar with. You can see it has a large range and found throughout Wisconsin and most of Minnesota. It's an annual or sometimes a biennial herb where it'll grow a vegetative portion on the ground and then flower the following year. It's a long flowering, gives long-term nectar source. It's a state flower of Maryland. Plant is toxic to cats if ingested. It's easy to grow and it is heat and drought tolerant. Provides nectar for butterflies, native bees, and nectar-dependent insects. It's a larval host for the Gorgon checker spot. And this is a Gorgon checker spot, but that is not a native species in Minnesota. Next one. Golden Alexander. This is a member of the carrot family. It'll grow in heavy clay soil, so it's a good plant to plant in the Duluth area, having clay soils quite a bit. Because the flowers are small, this plant is important for beneficial insects with small mouth parts. It's a short-lived perennial herb. So it only, even though it's perennial, only lives a few years. It'll take full sun or partial shade. It blooms fairly early compared to a lot of plants that provide pollen and nectar. So it's a good plant for early emerging bees in the spring. It's a larval host to the black swallowtail butterfly, which is native to Minnesota. And this is a black swallowtail. You can see up here. Next one. This one, most people who are interested in pollinator plants should be quite familiar with, wild bergamot. Also known as bee balm, and that's what a lot of people know it by. It's a member of the mint family. The plant has many medicinal uses, including as an antiseptic for treating skin infections and minor wounds, a carminative, which reduces or prevents gas in the gastrointestinal tract, and a diaphoretic, which is a sweat inducer. It can take full sun or partial shade. It is a very abundant nectar producer. And hummingbirds, honeybees, native bees, butterflies, and other birds visit this a lot for its nectar. And it grows in Carleton County, even though this is not shaded in. In fact, we have it right here on the reservation growing. So next one. Purple prairie clover. This is deep taproot that supports a long-lived plant that is almost impervious to heat and drought. It's a member of the bean family, so it is able to fix nitrogen, which helps enrich the soil. It's an obligate pollinator, includes the plaster bees. This little guy right here is a plaster bee. So that's a main pollinator of this plant. It requires full sun. It's a perennial herb or subshrub. So sometimes it can become kind of shrubby. But primarily in Minnesota, it usually does not become shrubby. It's a good nectar source for butterflies, honeybees, bumblebees, native bees, and nectar-dependent insects. And I have seen it in Carleton County, in the western part of Carleton County. Next one. Closed bottle gentian. It's a perennial herb. Plant in partial to full shade. So this one is interesting in that the corolla or the petals do not actually open. It stays closed like this, hence the name closed bottle. So only strong bees like bumblebees or native bees like the digger bees can force the corolla open. What they do is they fly to the tip and they actually force the petals apart to gain access into the tube to get at the nectar. Now, the eastern carpenter bee chews a narrow slit at the base of the flower and steals the nectar without pollinating the plant. This behavior is known as nectar robbing. So, and you can see that we have it fairly often. I have not seen it in Carleton County, however, but I have seen it in other parts of Minnesota and in Douglas County. Next one. Blazing star. This is a perennial herb. It's a host plant for the hemiparasitic Indian paintbrush. The hemiparasitic means that what it does is that the Indian paintbrush robs nutrition from the roots of the plant to help in its flowering. It provides nectar for butterflies, bumblebees, and native bees. And as you can see, it's in St. Louis County, and I actually have seen it in Douglas County. Next one. Great blue lobelia. This one requires full sun, partial shade, or shade, so it's not all that particular. This one is interesting in that visitors must be of the correct weight to depress the lower petals. So what it is that it forms a tube of the 5 petals. There's 2 petals on the top and 3 on the bottom, and forms a tube. And that generally it's bumblebees that have the correct weight. And when they land down on those 3 petals at the bottom, they're heavy enough that they push the petals down and open up the opening enough that the bee is able to crawl through the wider opening. If the bee is not heavy enough, they won't open the tube enough to be able to climb in. But again, some bees cheat, particularly bumblebees, in that they chew a hole in the tube near the base and steal the nectar. Again, nectar robbing, and they unfortunately steal the nectar without being able to pollinate. Next one. Stiff goldenrod. So goldenrods, you might have seen some goldenrods that have these bulges on their stems. We botanists call them galls, and that this is one of the goldenrods that's subject to that, and it's caused by a midge that plants its seeds inside the stem, and that stem causes the plant to enlarge in that area, and then it allows the larva from that midge to be able to have something to feed on for a while before the larva, before it comes out. And the goldenrods are subject to a lot of midges like that. So that's one thing to consider if you ever want to plant goldenrods, that they're subject to a lot of midges, and so it can be unsightly. It's a perennial herb. Attracts butterflies, native bees, wasps, flies, and beetles. So even beetles will come and feed on some of the nectar. Next one. Field thistle. This is one of the few native thistles that we don't really have a problem with. A lot of the thistles you'll see around are a problem, like the Canadian thistle or the bull thistle. This is not a thistle that we worry about. It's a perennial herb, meaning it grows vegetatively the first year and then flowers the second year. It requires full sun. Goldfinches like to eat the seeds. It's a larval host of the painted lady butterfly, which is native to Minnesota. Here's the painted lady here. It's a large pollen and nectar producer, so it attracts lots of hummingbirds, bumblebees, and butterflies, so they can eat profusely because of that large producer. I have seen it in Douglas County, so that map needs to be updated here. Actually, I think I've seen it in Aiken County as well, so. Next one. New Jersey tea. This is a perennial shrub and one of the few white flowered plants on our list. Full to partial shade. Turkeys and quails eat the seed, although you don't have to worry about the quails since we don't have native quails in this area. It grows up to 3 feet tall. It's very drought tolerant once it has become established due to the deep taproot, but it takes 2 to 3 years to mature before you'll see it actually flower. It's visited by a whole host of insects, including beetles. And I have seen it in Carleton County. So this map can be updated. Next one. Wild geranium. This plant has numerous common names, including alum root, crane's bill, spotted geranium, wood geranium, and old maid's nightcap. Used medicinally as an astringent, which is a substance that shrinks tissues and stops bleeding. Planted in shade or partial shade, the seeds attract mourning doves and quail. Again, quail doesn't exist around here. The adrenid bee is a specialist pollinator of this plant, and this is the adrenid bee. Visited by native bees, butterflies, and flies. I have not seen it in Carleton County. Next one. Ori vervain. This is an annual. One of the few annuals on our list. Typically grows in clumps and it's not aggressive. In fact, it will be outcompeted by vigorous native grasses, so you have to be careful where you're planting it. Planted in full sun. It's a larval host to the common buckeye butterfly, but that's not a species found in Minnesota. Butterflies, native bees, wasps, bee flies, and flies visit this. Again, this is a bee fly here. Next one. Prairie ironweed. Can grow up to 6 feet tall. It's a common pasture plant as herbivores avoid its bitter taste in preference to other plants. They plant in full sun, partial shade, or shade. It's not preferable. Visited by native bees, bumblebees, butterflies, and bee flies. And you can see it's more of a Western species, but it is native to some parts of Minnesota, including St. Louis County. And last one. Chokecherry, another white flowered plant. This is a tree or a shrub. It's also known as bitter cherry or Virginia bird cherry. It grows 20 to 30 feet tall and often forms thickets. It can be planted in full sun, partial shade, or shade. It's an important food source for birds. It's a larva of coral hairstreak, which is this butterfly, or red spotted purple butterflies, which is this butterfly. And they feed on this plant. They're both found in Minnesota. You can see it grows throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin. so it's a common plant. Unfortunately, it is also susceptible to what is a fungus called black knot, which can become unsightly, as all cherries are susceptible to black knot. So native bees, bumblebees, honeybees, and flies will also visit this, as well as the butterflies. Next slide. So for more information, I have a website here for Minnesota bees. If you want some more information about bees in Minnesota, butterflies of Minnesota as well. And for more information about pollinator habitat in residential areas, there's a whole host of information on the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources website. So any questions?
I have a question for you. Deb Smith would like to ask, how do pollinators get attracted to the plant? Is it from scent, color, or both?
It's usually both. Although there are some plants on this list that do not really have a scent, and so it's primarily the color that is attracting.
Rick, I have a question. What plant did you suggest for, did you say high blood pressure?
I did not have a plant that I said was for high
Okay.
blood pressure.
There was one like right in the beginning, maybe your first, second one. All right, sorry. Thank you.
I had one that I talked about for pleurisy root. That was for inflammation in the tissues that are in the lungs and chest cavity.
This is Steve Olson. I thought the Carleton County Soil and Water Conservation District had some pollinator kits available.
Oh, that would be cool.
So, and I just Googled Carleton County SWCD and could find out about those kits.
Yeah, those are probably by seed, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, most pollinator kits I've seen are packages of seeds. So some plants, the seeds are required to be hardened off by freezing.
Did you see my note? I actually purchased some from Carleton County last year, and I got some from 13 Moons as well. Planted a ton of them, and they were starter plants that they provided.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, starter plants would be even better than seed.
And I'm not sure if 13 Moons is providing plants again this year. Does anyone, Erica or Kelsey, do you know by chance?
Possible. I will have to check with Phil Savage. If the 13 Moons program will do pollinator.
Sounds good. Yeah, and we'll be sure to share that.
But the producer training program will have some pollinator plants for sure. And it's we getting from a local source greenhouse. And then also is the recommendations that we previous check with Rick Gitar last year. So we'll do the same plants, and some of the plants they're in this presentation. And we will let you know, and we will have a little flyer, a small flyer.
Yeah, in the past, I've always stressed to try and stick to native plants rather than try and bring some exotics in.
And it looks like Deb did share in the chat that the Carlton County Master Gardeners are going to have their plant sale May 21st. Okay, and then question from Steve, if we have bears in the area, are there plants we should avoid? I'm guessing they don't want bears in their yard.
Well, I can't specifically think of, there's a couple of plants on here that I know deer will eat, but I'm not sure about any that are actually attracting bears per se. I mean, the bear will go after the chokecherries, I know. But most of the others on this list will not attract a bear per se, because they're not really growing things that bears are attracted to. Bears are more going for berry type fruits rather than seeds. And these are all seed producers, except for the chokecherry producing the berries.
Deb, did you have something you wanted to add, or did you just unmute by accident? Oh, okay. And I'm sure there are people on this call that know about bears. So if you want to share any tips in the chat or call them out, feel free. And then I know I was wondering, because we do have a lot of gardeners and people growing food. Do you have any tips, Rick, on kind of planning out perennial plantings or designing them? And then any more tips on sourcing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really a gardener, so I don't cultivate plants myself. So I really can't say a source for getting plants or seeds. So I only encounter native plants where I hike and walk, and yeah, someone just put Prairie Moon Nursery. That's a good place. And also another good place for native plants is boreal natives.
All right, any other questions? I don't think I see any more in the chat unless I missed somebody.
I have a question.
Right.
Rick, you said that you've personally seen a lot of these plants in a lot of the counties that you were discussing. When do you typically, how long have you been collecting data on where all these plants were or noticing them?
Well, for a long time, before I worked for Fond du Lac, I've been working for Fond du Lac for 24 years, but before that I was an environmental consultant, and I did a lot of work for Wisconsin Department of Transportation in northeast or northwest Wisconsin. And so I had a lot of opportunity to work in Douglas County, Bayfield County, Washburn, Rusk County, and also did a lot of work in Carleton County, St. Louis County for various clients. And so I had a lot of opportunity to see a lot of native plants throughout the areas, doing plant surveys for various highway projects and other purposes. And so I just learned where a lot of plants were growing and saw a lot of stuff. So that's where a lot of that experience came from.
Miigwech.
I'm sorry, Erica. What is this website that you just put up again?
There's a website where we get our plants. It's a local greenhouse. It's a native owned business. And they have a lot of local plants. It's where the place where we get our pollinator plants that we give away last year and we will this year.
Okay, thank you.
Just sharing the website in case anyone else wanted to find plants. Anyone in this meeting, in this class.
And for the recording, that's sheilasgreenhouse.ca. If anyone out there wants to look that up. Okay, so maybe now would be a good time to turn up the recording in case anyone has anything they want to add. Before I do that, Rick, is there anything else you wanted to add for the recording or say about the plants you just talked about?
Nope, I don't think so.
Great.
So I just have something to add. And I just I heard today about the bird flu that's coming through. I mean, is it a good idea that we just hold off? And I know Rick had mentioned that the birds, type of seeds that they like. Would it be a good idea to kind of hold off on planting, the sunflowers and stuff like that?
Well, you could plant those, okay, but what I've heard them recommending is that you don't put out birds feeders. So they want you to avoid having birds congregate in close proximity to each other. But generally, a single plant won't be attracting multiple birds to each individual plant.
Very good, Miigwech.
I heard today that as the migration ends, the bird flu risk is going to be lowered. So
Right, yeah.
So it's more, we're not going to be planting anything until the migration is pretty much ended.
Yeah, and I've heard that the DNR is starting to recommend that it would probably, as migration starts to end, it would probably be okay to put feeders out if you clean them on a weekly basis.
Excellent. Thanks so much for bringing that up, Vanessa. I know a lot of people have been thinking about that. All right. Well, again, for the recording, Rick, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your passion for the plants. And with that, I will stop recording. If I can find the button, there it is.